In Latin, Volvo means I roll. To most people, Volvo means safety. Its reputation for building sturdy, reliable and safe cars has helped it grow from a small local company to one of the world's leading car producers. Its success stems from a spirit that overcomes obstacle after obstacle to survive in an increasingly competitive world. When most car companies unveil a concept car, it's usually a styling exercise, seldom meant to see the showroom. But Volvo's experimental safety concept car is a true glimpse of the company's future. Packed with features like transparent A-pillars for better visibility, the collision sensors, 4-point seat belts, and cameras that give an unobstructed view of the rear, as well as monitoring passengers. Volvo hopes this car and its current lineup will finally dispel the notion that Volvos can't be fun or sexy, an image it's been battling since it was born in the 1920s. When automobiles were introduced, they were not intended for the common man. They were curious contraptions that only the rich could afford. Being seen in an automobile was a status symbol. It was far from a convenience. The Germans had Mercedes, the French, Peugeots. The Americans had Ford and Cadillac. But Swedish drivers had no car that spoke to their national identity. Two men decided to change that. Assar Gabrielsson and Gustav Larsson met while working at the Swedish ball bearing company SKF in 1924. Gabrielsson was an engineer who had experience working for the British car industry. Larsson was the head of sales at SKF. From the beginning, they were determined to do things differently. One thing they wanted to change was quality control. Rather than put together cars on an assembly line from parts ordered through a large network of suppliers, Larsson and Gabrielsson had a revolutionary idea. Their plan was to design all the parts themselves, then carefully monitor the manufacturing, holding suppliers to a strict set of standards. To get backing from SKF, the pair built a rugged-looking open-topped prototype. SKF agreed to finance the operation, and production began in 1927 at the ball bearing company AB Volvo near Gothenburg. The two engineers hoped their OV4, a conventional open-topped four-cylinder car, would be a hit. They chose the symbol of the Roman god Vulcan, god of iron and steel, for their first car because it advertised that it was built from strong Swedish steel. It was a capable car, but producing a convertible in Sweden seemed to be an impractical choice. By the summer of that year, a closed-body version of the car had been added to the lineup. Certainly more practical, but it was boxy and technically out of date. The only thing different that it offered Swedish buyers was that it was built in Sweden. Sales were low and the profit margins slim on each car. This was due to the high level of quality the company required its suppliers to deliver. It was an increasingly risky business venture. SKF was becoming disenchanted with Volvo. They entertained an offer from the American Nash Corporation. A desperate Assar Gabrielsson brokered a deal with SKF to keep them from selling the company. He promised that Volvo would be profitable in under a year. SKF agreed, and he delivered. Volvo's rescue relied on supplying a lucrative market for trucks and buses, not selling cars. It turned out trucks while the engineers worked on improving the OV4s. They beefed up the power by adding a 6-cylinder engine and took the cars out to compete in the 1928 Swedish Winter Rally. They won. Victory created enthusiasm for the cars, but they needed to do more. The company's philosophy was to only make changes for the sake of improvements, not for the sake of change. This practical approach had served them well, but if they wanted to expand in the passenger car arena, they had to upgrade their styling. The 1933 World's Fair was a celebration of the future of industrial design. Many international automakers showed their product visions to the millions of people who attended. Volvo engineers were taken with the car that Chrysler introduced, the Airflow. It clearly was inspired by the international move towards streamlining. The company hired an American-trained engineer and asked him to create something revolutionary for them. While he worked on the new Volvo, it was becoming clear that the Airflow wasn't a success. People didn't respond to its futuristic styling. It was a failure. Undaunted, Volvo pushed ahead with the Carioca. It too bombed, but its chassis laid the groundwork for Volvo's first mass-produced car, the PV51. While the company was basking in its good fortune, the world was thrown into war. Germany invaded Poland in the fall of 1939, and Volvo feared that the European conflagration would spread to Sweden. The rapid series of German blitzkriegs across Europe was alarming. Volvo officials thought its prospects for continuing to produce vehicles were bleak. But they hadn't counted on the needs of the Swedish Defence Forces. The insatiable demand of the military made the war years extremely profitable for the company. Volvo turned out a high volume of military vehicles, including tanks and all-terrain trucks. Its production was guided by the need to produce functional, durable, and extremely mobile vehicles. These were Volvo traits. But as the war wound down, it was clear the public would soon be looking for new cars. In the fall of 1944, Volvo held a show at the Royal Tennis Hall in Stockholm to exhibit its entire range of products. Most of the interest centered on its new car, the PV444. One car was given away every day. This caused the exhibition to be jammed with nearly 150,000 visitors who wanted to see or win the new car. Its many safety innovations included laminated safety glass and other unique features like a padded dash and sun visor. It also had what was called a safety body. The concept was to create crush zones that would absorb the impact of a crash and protect the occupants even in a rollover accident. It was hoped that the PV444 would become the Swedish people's car, like the Volkswagen in Germany, the Citroën 2CV in France, or Morris Minor in Britain. It would be simple, functional, and affordable. But Volvo's main suppliers of steel and sheet metal in Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia, were now behind the Iron Curtain. Germany was divided in two. The Saar coal and steel industry was in ruins and would take years to re-establish. All this delayed the PV444's launch. While Europe's factories were being rebuilt, Volvo used its scant resources for aviation engines, trucks, buses and tractors. Eventually, the steel mills started production again, and the PV 444 could be officially launched. In 1947, nearly 2.5 years after its prototype was shown, Volvo management was finally able to meet the growing demand for its innovative new car. The hunger for these cars, pent up during 5 years of war, was so high in Scandinavia that some purchasers had happily waited 2 years to take delivery. More than 10,000 had been sold before production began. Volvo engineers had used the delay to refine the design, copying many of the latest American interior touches. For the first time in the company's history, car production outstripped truck manufacturing. This car and its follower, the PV 544, established Volvo's reputation for building rugged cars that last. This success finally assured Volvo a spot in the lucrative foreign car market. In 1955, the first Volvo cars were exported to the United States. But it needed a cosmetic overhaul to sell. By 1957, the model was offered with features not available in Sweden. Some had fancy exhaust pipes, special color schemes, an exterior sun visor, and a driver-side spotlight. Volvo made 57,000 cars that year, half sold abroad, and 10,000 sold in the US. Volvo was soon the #2 import in California. The cars were particularly popular with people who were turned off by the American industry's seeming inability to build cars that lasted more than 3 to 5 years. An independent study done in the 1960s would show Volvos lasted an average of 13.5 years. In 1956, as the company attained its long-hoped-for success, Assar Gabrielson retired as president. He made sure something was in the works that would keep things moving ahead, the Amazon 120 series. It had a new look and featured something that would change the automotive world: 3-point front safety belts as standard equipment. Invented by Volvo engineer Niels Bolin, the 3-point safety belt is considered to be one of the most important life-saving innovations in automotive history. Volvo took safety and lessening the damage suffered in a crash seriously. American car builders believed that safety didn't sell. During the 1960s in the United States, consumer advocate Ralph Nader launched a series of campaigns against American car makers, charging that they ignored safety. Volvos began to look better and better to an American public becoming increasingly concerned about safety. Volvo had sold more than 50,000 sedans in the US. It was now its biggest market. The cars were seen all around the world as being better built, safer, and designed to last longer. It all began in the factory.
Each part is examined thoroughly. All components must have the same high quality, and they're tested in many ways before final assembly is carried out. Okay for this part of the inspection.
Volvo continued to grow throughout the 1960s under the leadership of President Gunnar Engellau, who made sure that the company's rigorous standards were maintained. As sales climbed, Volvo began playing with the idea of building a sports car. It had tried once before and failed, but Engellau believed it was time to try again. A successful sports car would help it grow overseas. Volvo looked at stylists from the big Italian firms, Vignale and Ghia, but settled on a concept by a young boat designer who happened to be the son of one of its executives. Jaguar in England was making a splash with its new XKE, and Volvo hoped its new car would appeal to the same upscale buyers. Volvo didn't have the capacity to build its proposed low-slung car, so it settled on a company in Scotland to assemble them. The P1800 was well received for its elegant design, but got mild reviews for performance. It received an unexpected publicity boost when it was chosen over Jaguar by a new television series, The Saint, for its star Roger Moore to drive. Moore fell in love with the car when he was shown a picture. "My old motoring heart skipped a beat," he said. Like all Volvos, they proved to be durable. This one has been driven over 1 million miles. While the Amazon was selling well, by 1967 it was time to introduce a new model, the 140 series of sedans. Over 667,000 Amazons had been made when the last one rolled out in 1970. Volvo's concern for automotive safety had begun to be shared in the United States. All car makers were required to develop systems to improve crash survivability. Lawmakers in the US enacted legislation and regulations that directed the manufacturers to change. Volvo was ready. Its new 140 series had even more safety features than the Amazons. Volvo's 140 came with rear-facing child seats, collapsible steering columns, and side collision protection. While the engineers worked on enhanced safety features, they also were developing the replacement for the 140, the 240. Of course, the 240 incorporated many new safety features like improved handling and a fuel tank that was better protected. Many thought its modern 2.7-litre V6, capable of meeting increasingly strict environmental standards, was its most important new feature. Volvo pinned its hopes on the 240 to be its main revenue earner. However, a weak world economy in the 1970s, worries about overcapacity in the car industry, and increased competition caused Volvo to look for a partner in 1977. Sweden's other major auto manufacturer, Saab-Scania, was seen as a good fit. The two companies hoped to save money by combining, but the deal fell through. Volvo's president, Per Gellenhammer, set to work on pushing Volvo into the upper brackets to compete with BMW and Mercedes with its new 700 series. He realized safety had to be combined with style. That didn't mean that Volvo had turned its back on safety. It forged ahead with its unique accident investigation team. This group investigates thousands of accidents each year, going to the scene, reviewing damage claims and interviewing people to discover how to help the engineers build safer vehicles. In 1990, Volvo suffered its first operating loss in 61 years. Declining sales, falling exchange rates, and an anxious workforce created a gloomy atmosphere. But development and testing continued on the new 850, its first front-wheel drive car. Front-wheel drive was considered to be ideal for Sweden's snowbound, often icy roads. The new 850 also featured better rear suspension and a double overhead camshaft engine that was available with a turbocharger in some markets. It was the fastest and sportiest Volvo ever built. But the uncertainties of the international auto business prompted Volvo to enter into discussion with Renault. These talks also collapsed but company officials realized that they were too small to carry the car-making operation on their own. They redoubled their efforts to find a strong partner to help them remain competitive. After much speculation about who would buy the oldest automobile company in the country, Ford stepped in and acquired Volvo in 1999. Ford's president, Jack Nasser, put up more than $6.5 billion for the car company regarded as the safest in the world. Ford was eager to help Volvo shed its stodgy image while maintaining a reputation for quality and safety. The V70 delivered. Its top-class environmental and safety features pleased die-hard Volvo drivers, while its styling and performance cast a wider net. Volvo continued its reach into a growing, youthful market that hungered for sporty but reliable vehicles with the new S60 and the S60R. These cars brought an entirely new kind of buyer into the showrooms. They could serve a young family, as well as delivering a high-performance driving experience. One thing was still lacking: a sport utility vehicle, or SUV. In the late 1990s, the market for SUVs was booming. But there were also some drawbacks, especially for a company like Volvo, that prided itself on being perceived as the company that cared. They wanted a car that was environmentally friendly and safe. Building on the S80 chassis, Volvo worked to ensure that its new SUV, the XC90, had only marginally higher fuel consumption and emissions than the rest of its cars. The true test, and the most important standard for it, was safety. In 2000, the Volvo Safety Center opened. This $81 million leading-edge testing facility took the company's obsession with safety seriously. Volvo reasoned that its reputation for safety could be destroyed if it didn't do things differently. They worked on passenger safety and ways to minimize the damage done to other vehicles in a collision. Corners were rounded, the hood was designed to reduce impact, and the bumpers were produced to work with a smaller car's safety system. The XC90 hit the streets and won the Motor Trend SUV of the Year award. Volvo had created a sport utility vehicle that appealed to its buyers. While the XC90 was a hit, Volvo couldn't ignore its flagship sedan, the S80. A new version was released in 2004 that the company hoped would show that it knew safety wasn't enough. Increased competition from Lexus, Audi, Mercedes, BMW and Acura had chipped away at the sales of its sedans. From 30,000 sales a year in the US in 1999, it was down to about 16,000. The company hoped that its new range of enhanced sedans with added elegance, luxuries and performance would appeal to affluent buyers. Driving the S80 revealed that Volvo had succeeded in creating a capable car that had reassuring handling. It didn't have the stunning performance of an M-Series BMW, but it was lively, responsive and sure-footed. All reasons that over 88% of S80's owners would recommend one to a friend. Volvo has come a long way since the evening of July 25, 1924, when Asa Gabrielsen and Gustav Larsen decided to launch the company. While it's grown and changed, the founders would be happy to know that their philosophy to build safe, high-quality vehicles has endured. Volvo's future is guided by the principles of its past.